European leaders are gathering in Berlin for a meeting to once again coordinate their position and achieve a just peace for Ukraine. I'll share the details of the summit. Then in addition, special attention. Today I am focusing on such topics and events. Zelensky arrived in Kupiansk, the capture of which Russian generals were quick to report to Putin. Ukraine's defense forces carried out a successful counter-operation, stabilizing the situation in the city. A large group of Russian occupiers found themselves trapped.
Today, it is extremely important to achieve results on the front so that Ukraine can achieve results in diplomacy.
The Kremlin's senseless terror continues. Russia attacked a civilian vessel in the port of Chornomorsk. The missile strike severely damaged the ship. Ukrainian rescuers are extinguishing the fire. The European Union will indefinitely block Russia's frozen assets. This decision paves the way for using the money as a reparations loan for Ukraine. The Budapest veto is no longer an obstacle. Brussels' wishes have been taken into account.
This undoubtedly provides a more solid foundation for working on guarantees. In our proposals, we provide security guarantees for Belgium as well as for financial institutions.
Good evening, my name is Mikhail Baranov, and now for more details. The Regional Military Administration reports that the Russian army launched a missile and drone strike on the ports of Odessa and Chornomorsk. Civilian and port infrastructure facilities have been destroyed. A civilian vessel was damaged in Chornomorsk. According to preliminary information, at least one person was injured. Local media report that a container ship belonging to a Turkish company which was transporting generators was attacked. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky responded to this strike. He showed a video of the Russian attack and noted that it had no military purpose whatsoever, and it only demonstrates that Moscow does not take the chance for diplomacy seriously and continues its war to destroy normal life in Ukraine. This once again proves that the Russians not only fail to take the current opportunity for diplomacy seriously enough, but also continue waging a war aimed specifically at destroying normal life in Ukraine. It is important that under such circumstances the world maintains the right perspective. Who is prolonging this war and who is trying to end it peacefully? Who is using ballistic missiles against civilian life and who is striking precisely those targets that impact the Russian war machine? Volodymyr Zelensky, President of Ukraine, on Telegram. For several days in a row, the Russian army has been deliberately attacking the energy infrastructure of Odessa and the region. One of the largest strikes took place on the night of December 12th. The Russian occupiers are trying to leave the region without electricity. Ksenia Sitinska reports on how Odessa is living after daily attacks.
For almost a whole week, the Russian army has been attacking energy facilities in the Odessa region almost non-stop. On the night of December 12th, the 20th facility was already hit, a substation in the region. As a result, part of the city was left without electricity. Some facilities of the city water utility were also left without power. All week, the Odessa region has been living under conditions of prolonged power outages. Residents of Odessa have their electricity cut off for 7 hours straight, twice a day, and it's only on for 3 to 4 hours.
Everything is difficult. It's hard at work, it's hard at home, without electricity. In
general, you can live, it's okay. They turn off the power, it's tough, but we've gotten used to it.
It's much better than last year, after the strike in our yard. Much better.
Entrepreneurs are stepping in to help people cope with the constant power outages. Some city cafes and shops have become makeshift resilience points where you can charge your phone or laptop. This is one of the restaurants in the center of Odessa. When there's no electricity, they start up a generator here and let visitors use the power. In addition, the lower floor of this establishment is often used as a shelter during Russian air raids.
If there's no electricity in the area, people living nearby come here to charge their devices. If there's an air raid alert, people come because we have a basement that serves as a bomb shelter. Offices also come down here. All the bomb shelters are used.
Energy workers continue to deal with the aftermath of Russian attacks on Odessa and the region. During the day on December 12th, the Russian army did not stop shelling the suburbs. Ksenia Sitinskaya, Zurab Tereluri from Odessa for Freedom TV channel.
The national police showed footage of Kostyantynivka destroyed by the Russians. Until 2022, 78,000 people lived there. Today, only about 5% of the population remains in the city, roughly 4,000 people. Last week, 300 people were evacuated. Kostyantynivka is an industrial center that Russia has turned into ruins. Apartment buildings have been burned, schools and churches destroyed. The city and its surroundings are under daily shelling. There is no water or electricity, and the gas supply was cut off back in the summer. Forced evacuation of families with children continues in Kostyantynivka. Vladimir Zelensky visited Kupiansk in the Kharkiv region, a city whose capture was claimed by the dictator a few days ago. Putin, together with the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, Oleksandr Syrsky, the head of state, met with the soldiers who carried out the operation to drive the Russians out of the city. The president of Ukraine received a report on the situation in this direction, and in his video address emphasized that it is extremely important to achieve results at the front so that Ukraine can achieve results at the diplomatic table.
Wishing you good health. Today is the Kupiansk direction. Wishing you good health. Today the Kupiansk direction. Our soldiers here are achieving results for Ukraine. The Russians talked a lot about Kupiansk. We see. I was there, congratulated the guys. I thank every unit, everyone who is fighting here, everyone who is destroying the occupier. Today it is extremely important to achieve results at the front so that Ukraine can achieve results in diplomacy. That's exactly how it works. All our strong positions inside the country are strong positions in the conversation about ending the war. Thank you to every warrior. I am proud of you. And I thank all our ground forces. Today is truly your day. Thank you, guys. Glory to Ukraine.
The president also congratulated Ukrainian defenders on Ground Forces Day and presented them with state awards. Orders of Bogdan Khmelnytsky of the 1st and 3rd degree, Orders of Courage of the 3rd degree, and medals for military service to Ukraine. The Supreme Commander-in-Chief thanked the servicemen for their tireless work for the good of Ukraine, for defending national sovereignty and the country's security. The Russian military command is sending demoralized infantry into attacks without support. And to carry out their plan to capture Mirnohrad, they are using the tactic of human wave assaults. This was reported by the 7th Corps of the Ukrainian Air Assault Forces. Over the past few weeks, fighters from the 38th Marine Brigade near the approaches to Mirnohrad have captured several groups of Russian soldiers while they were searching for food. It should also be noted that 93 combat engagements have been recorded in the combat zone since the beginning of the day. More details about the situation on the front line are coming up next.
The situation in the Kupiansk direction has stabilized, and in Kupiansk itself, more than 200 Russian occupiers are surrounded, according to the command of the National Guard Corps of Ukraine, Kartia. In September, after the situation in the city escalated, an operation was organized to eliminate the Russian breakthrough. To achieve this, Ukraine's defense forces advanced to the Oskil River, cutting off the enemy's logistics routes. In almost 4 months of the operation, more than 1,000 Russian occupiers have been eliminated. About 300 were wounded and 13 surrendered.
The defense forces have carried out a series of operations that have been ongoing for more than half a year, actively. While dictator Putin claims that someone is surrounded, that they have taken Kupiansk, in reality, the defense forces managed to clear the enemy from the northeastern outskirts of the city of Kupiansk, from the northern outskirts of Kupiansk, as well as from the city itself. They suppressed the sabotage and reconnaissance groups, those who were scattered in basements and shelters, and who tried to control certain areas, but ultimately failed to do so. Kupiansk, Left Bank Kupiansk, and Vuzlovyi are under the full control of the defense forces, and as a result, the enemy's numerous assaults did not end in success for them.
Despite the intensity of the Russian army's attacks, Ukraine's defense forces are successfully thwarting the enemy's plans. Thus, in the Huliaipol direction, near Dobropilia, fighters of the 33rd Separate Assault Regiment stopped an attempted Russian breakthrough, eliminating 14 soldiers and destroying 4 motorcycles and a truck. Once again, the enemy failed to advance. And in the northern Sloboziansky direction, border guards struck a Russian occupier's mortar. In addition, an enemy shelter, communication antennas, and UAV control systems that supported the operation of Russian drones were destroyed. In the Lyman direction, the enemy attacked in the areas of the settlements of Zareknoye, Drobyshevo, as well as towards Drudjulyubovka, Novosergeyevka, and Alexandrovka. In the Konstantinovka direction, Ukraine's defense forces repelled Russian attacks in the areas of the settlements of Shcherbinovka, Pleshcheyevka, Yablonovka, and towards Sofiivka. In the Pokrovsk direction, the Russian army attempted to advance toward Ukrainian military positions in the areas of Kotlin settlements. Udaka in the direction of Novopavlovka and Mirnograd.
we see that it is not only operational reserves that have been transferred there. Pokrovka, 76th Decentralized Assault Division, Puskovskaya elite of the Russian Federation. It was redeployed to Pokrovsk in order to press the situation in this city. And in general, in the entire agglomeration, we see that now, according to Meta's data, the forces of unmanned systems are gradually... They are also bleeding this division dry, since for the third day in a row, records are being set by unmanned systems in destroying enemy manpower. That's why we see that as difficult. Urban combat is ongoing in Pokrovsk. And these urban battles are gradually destroying the Russian army, which is trying to crush our forces in this city. This shows that the enemy wants to accomplish their objective. In other words, all the deadlines have been missed, but the objective remains. About the
Special Operations Forces unit. Together with the insurgent movement Black Spark, they struck 2 Russian vessels off the coast of the Republic of Kalmykia in the Caspian Sea. The ships were transporting weapons and military equipment. The vessels are under US sanctions due to the transportation of military cargo between Iran and Russia. The special unit Primari of the main intelligence directorate of the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense set fire to a multi-purpose Antonov 26 aircraft on the territory of temporarily occupied Crimea, a military transport aircraft. The Russians were preparing it for takeoff and had even started the engines. A direct hit disabled it. 2 key radar stations that supported the operation of Russian S-300 and S-400 systems were also destroyed.
1,400 Russian occupiers were eliminated over the past day by the Defense Forces of Ukraine. Thus, according to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, the total losses of the Russian army since the start of the full-scale war have exceeded 1,186,000 military personnel. In addition, the day before, Ukrainian defenders destroyed 1 enemy aircraft, 2 tanks, 6 armored combat vehicles, 16 artillery pieces, 2 multiple rocket launch systems, 3 air defense assets, and 107 vehicles.
Despite the pressure from the Russian Federation's army at the front, the real results of its offensive are very insignificant. According to estimates by the American Institute for the Study of War, since the beginning of this year, the Russian Federation has managed to occupy less than 1% of Ukrainian territory despite daily assaults and massive losses. Analysts emphasize that the price of these so-called successes is the colossal loss of manpower, which Moscow tries to conceal by claiming to have inexhaustible resources. In reality, Russia is already facing a crisis in replenishing its army, and according to forecasts by the American Center, this will intensify in 2026. It will be forced to more actively recruit reservists. Ukraine's defense forces have struck Russian strategic targets to undermine the enemy's offensive potential and complicate its logistics. In particular, the unmanned systems forces attacked one of Russia's largest oil refineries in the Yaroslavl region. This facility processed more than 15 million tons of fuel daily and actively supplied the needs of the occupying forces. After the strike, a massive fire broke out on the plant's premises. The extent of the damage is being assessed. In addition, in the Donetsk region, an ammunition depot was hit, as well as locations where enemy personnel were concentrated near Mirnohrad and Rodinsky. More and more often, robots are carrying out military tasks on the front line. They take on the most dangerous missions, in places where infantry cannot advance and artillery cannot reach. The Skiff Brigade of the National Guard in Slobozhanshchina demonstrated the operation of one of their ground robotic systems. It is manufactured in Ukraine, can transport up to 400 kilograms of various cargo, evacuate the wounded, and be used during assaults on enemy positions. Natalia Belokudria saw how the Guardsman's crew is learning to operate the machine called Bero.
This is the BRO ground robotic system, designed to perform logistics, evacuation, and special transport tasks in combat conditions. It is the latest Ukrainian development, with a prototype released in 2024. Subsequently, one of the GRS units was transferred to the Skiff Brigade for operations in the northern Slobozhanshchina direction.
Because of the location, we understand that the enemy is very close to you, so we see the necessity of delivering drinking water, food, ammunition, and so on for the personnel to preserve lives.
Guardsman with the call sign Gray is mastering a new specialty. He is a GRS operator gunner and is now preparing to send the robot on a mission.
Right now, I'm currently trying to switch it to radio control in contrast to previously, whereas before it was controlled via a laptop, a personal computer.
Senior Sergeant Gray has been at the front since 2023. He was the commander of a mortar crew, defended Lipchi and Kupiansk, and went through Kremlin and Klishchivka. When his unit was transferred to the Kharkiv region, the command offered him to become a GRS operator. Operating the robot turned out to be not so easy, Gray admits.
You can compare it to a game joystick, but the specifics are a bit different. You have to hold it differently, and everything is much more sensitive. You can make mistakes, so you have to work very, very carefully. This particular GRS has a specific feature in its turning mechanism. You have to anticipate it. In other words, you realize that to make it turn, you need to adjust it yourself. So you have to think ahead for it a little bit in advance.
Gray has been testing the device for a month now, right in the combat zone. He is assisted by a fighter with the call sign Raccoon, the unit's chief technician. The GRS crew consists of 2 people. One operates the drone, while the other monitors the situation in the air to give directions on where to go. The unit weighs 300 kilograms and can carry up to 400 kilograms.
15 kilometers per hour. That's its speed. A maximum of 400 kilograms, but ideally it's better to keep it at 200 to 250. No more than that. It all depends on the weather conditions. If the weather is good, you can carry more. If it's like what we see now, then not so much. You need to load it carefully because it doesn't climb hills very well.
The engineers who developed the UGV say that the main difference between this system and other GRS units is its high off-road capability.
Thanks to our all-metal chassis, it isn't afraid of debris or anti-personnel mines and is quite capable off-road.
Gray and Raccoon are confident that soon robots will replace humans in the most dangerous areas of the front line. That's why the development of modern Ukrainian military technologies is one of the main areas that Ukraine's defense forces are actively working on. Natalia Belokudri and Andrei Domovoy reporting from Kharkiv region for Freedom TV channel.
European leaders will gather in Berlin on Monday to discuss a peace plan for Ukraine. This was reported by Reuters. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer and French President Emmanuel Macron will attend the meeting. Later, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz also confirmed the talks. European leaders made this decision after, as President Zelensky stated, Ukraine will soon share an improved version of the peace plan with the United States. The United States of America may help Ukraine with security guarantees. According to US President Donald Trump, this is an important factor for ending the war. As early as tomorrow, December 13th, the US, Ukraine, and EU countries will discuss the key provisions of the draft peace plan in Paris. National security advisors from Ukraine, France, Germany, and the United Kingdom will take part in the meeting. Donald Trump stated that the United States will also send its representative. In addition, Volodymyr Zelensky and European leaders want to hold a phone conversation with the US president this weekend.
The meeting will take place on Saturday. We'll see if we will participate. For now, we have agreed. If I believe there is a good chance of achieving a result, we think it needs to be completed.
Donald Trump is the only world leader capable of persuading the Russian dictator Putin to engage in real peace negotiations. This was stated by NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte. According to him, the Kremlin only enters into dialogue when it is beneficial to them, and it is impossible to predict the timing of a possible agreement. However, Rutte also noted that if the United States and European capitals form a unified position and present it to Moscow, this could become a turning point.
President Trump wants to put an end to the bloodshed right now, and only he can force Putin to come to the negotiating table. So let's put Putin to the test and see whether he truly wants peace or prefers for the bloodshed to continue.
Americans and Europeans are searching for a final goal that will demonstrate that Russia has failed to achieve its strategic objectives in the war against Ukraine. This was stated by the President of Finland, Alexander Stubb. He noted that it is important for Russia not to achieve its goals, and for Ukraine to maintain its independence and become a member of the European Union.
I still believe that there are 3 key issues on which this entire peace agreement depends. One of them is the territories, and only the Ukrainians can decide this issue. The second is security guarantees. And here both the Americans and Europeans need to be very firm. And the third is the reconstruction of Ukraine, in which we must help as much as possible. Alexander Stubb, President of Finland.
The EU has decided to indefinitely freeze Russia's assets, and Hungary and Slovakia will no longer be able to block their allocation in support of Ukraine. Thus, the European Union has prepared the technical groundwork for providing Ukraine with a reparations loan using Russian assets. The decision to allocate 90 billion euros, which is needed to fund Ukraine's budget in 2026 to 2027, may be made as early as next week at the meeting of EU leaders in Brussels. Details will be provided by Vitaly Sizov, special correspondent for Freedom TV channel in Europe.
Ukraine needs about 140 billion euros additionally for budget expenditures over the next 2 years. The European Union is ready to provide 2/3 of the required amount, 90 billion euros, securing it through frozen Russian assets. These assets are mainly held in Belgium, where there are about 180 billion worth. For the loan to work, stability and predictability and the pressure on Russia are necessary. This includes a decision on the indefinite freezing of its assets. Previously, they were frozen every 6 months. Every 6 months it was necessary to adopt the corresponding decision unanimously by all members of the European Union. Now, however, this can be done by a qualified majority, and individual countries like Hungary will no longer be able to jeopardize the freezing of assets.
The immobilization of Russian assets has obviously also strengthened work on the reparations loan, since we will not be relying solely on the EU sanctions regime, which provides for the extension of these sanctions every 6 months. Thus, this is undoubtedly the case. It provides a more solid foundation for work on guarantees. In our proposals, we provide security guarantees for Belgium as well as for financial institutions.
EU officials and representatives of most EU countries have agreed to apply Article 122 of the Treaty on the Functioning of the EU, which allows decisions to be made by qualified majority in cases of emergency. In their view, the situation with Russia waging war in Europe affects everyone, including the economy of the European Union. This is quite an extraordinary circumstance.
Last night we had a dinner with all our colleagues dedicated to the very important issue of new EU funding for Ukraine. It is extremely important that we make progress on this issue. Europe's security is directly linked to what is happening in Ukraine. Providing new funding for Ukraine, this is a serious European responsibility. We in Europe are already living today with the consequences of war on the European continent. Countries are living with the presence of drones in their airspace, employing hybrid methods of warfare. Some countries are spending almost 5% of their GDP on defense. Other countries are spending enormous amounts to support Ukraine. Now, as a united Europe, we also need to provide new funding.
Belgium is a key country in providing Ukraine with credit. It holds the majority of Russian assets in the European Union, and it fears that if it provides a reparations loan, it may be left alone to face Russia's claims. Belgium wants all countries to share the risks and guarantees which would secure its agreement. In theory, the European Union can make a decision without Belgium's support, but in practice, it will be difficult to implement. That is not in the spirit of Brussels. Representatives of the Belgian government are cautious in their statements about the possibility of supporting the provision of a reparations loan.
This issue is very important. And just to be clear, the goal and purpose here are also absolutely clear. Unwavering support, and Russia really must pay for the war, for the unjust war, and for the aggression, and the frozen assets should be used for this purpose. The question, of course, is that today as responsible politicians we do have some concerns. Therefore, it is clear that we are considering the vulnerabilities as well as the legal and financial risks associated with the proposed option. But I know for sure that we are looking for constructive solutions. I am confident that if we work together on this constructive solution, we will become stronger as a union, as the European Union.
EU officials believe that their proposal for a reparations loan contains sufficient safeguards. They are confident that European financial institutions holding Russian assets will be able to claim compensation if Moscow, in response, demands the confiscation of these institutions' assets in Russia.
EU financial institutions holding these immobilized assets are fully protected from legal proceedings. In particular, under our current sanctions, EU central depositories can offset any seizures in Russia with frozen or immobilized assets held here. It can be expected that Russia will continue to initiate speculative legal proceedings to prevent the EU from complying with international law. and to seek enforcement of Russia's legal obligation to compensate Ukraine for the damage it has caused. That is why, both under our current sanctions regime and in the extensions we introduced last week, we have provided additional protection for EU financial institutions holding these frozen assets of the Russian Central Bank.
The European Union is getting closer to making a decision on providing Ukraine with long-term financial support. One of the options for this is a reparations loan. If approved, this will be yet another signal to Moscow. That aggression against Ukraine will literally have to be paid for. Vitaly Sizov, Ruslan Kuzgov from Brussels for Freedom TV channel.
The United Kingdom is developing plans to prepare for a possible outbreak of war. This was stated by the Minister for Veterans Affairs, Alistair Cairns. According to him, the Army and Navy can respond to crises, but society and the economy play an important role. Cairns has also reported that the threat from hostile intelligence has increased by more than half over the past year. Russia, China, Iran and North Korea are suspected of this. In response, the UK government is creating a new counterintelligence service. War is once again knocking on Europe's door. This is reality. We must be ready to prevent it. Right now, there is significant work being done between us, the cabinet and society as a whole. It will help us understand what conflict means and what role each person in society plays if we enter a war and prepare for it. We need to communicate this to people, not to frighten them, but to be realistic and to understand where these threats come from and why defense and an all-of-society approach are so important. Alistair Cairns, the UK Minister for Veterans Affairs, in a Sky News report. For 3 days, the British Navy tracked the Russian submarine Krasnodar. It was passing through the English Channel together with a tugboat. To ensure continuous monitoring, the Royal Navy deployed specialized anti-submarine helicopters and a military tanker. Near one of the French islands, the Royal Navy handed over monitoring duties to NATO partners. Naval Command notes that this operation is part of increased monitoring of Russian activity, which has risen significantly since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Over the past 2 years, London has recorded a 30% increase in the number of Russian vessels threatening the United Kingdom's waters.